Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us again for our evening devotions, continuing on through the Psalms. And tonight I want to read from Psalm 2. Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord, against his anointed, saying, "Let us break their chains and throw off their shackles." The one enthroned in heaven laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. He rebukes them in his anger, and he terrifies them in his wrath, saying, "I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. I will proclaim the Lord's decree. He said to me, 'You are my son. Today I have become your father. Ask me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. You will break them with a rod of iron. You will dash them to pieces like pottery.' Therefore, you kings, be wise. Be warned, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and celebrate his rule with trembling. Kiss the Son, or he will be angry, and your way will lead to your destruction, for his wrath can flare up in a moment. Blessed are all who take refuge in him." Like Psalm 1, the second psalm is neither a song nor a prayer. It is a gateway into the Psalms. It helps us to get ready to learn how to pray. The first psalm focuses on the personal. It seeks to shape us as individuals to be ready to pray, to allow the Torah, the instruction of the Lord, to hit its mark on our hearts. The second psalm seeks to expand our vision of the one to whom our prayers are addressed. In Psalm 1, we are directed to approach God's Torah with delight, to memorize it, to allow it to work its way into the fabric of our lives. In Psalm 2, we're presented with an altogether different picture. Rather than receiving Torah as the life-giving word of God to delight in, the people in this psalm plot against it. They devise schemes for getting rid of it, so that they can be free of what they perceive as God's interference in their lives. Now, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to realise that that could be an apt description of the society in which we live today. In the face of what can sometimes be momentous events outside of our control, in the face of the apparent triumph of the wicked and what Nietzsche called the death of God, we might well ask, what's the point in praying? Faith with plots and schemes against the word of God, plots that seem to be succeeding when you look around you. We might well ask, what difference can prayer make? In one book on prayer, Eugene Peterson makes the observation that prayer is political action. When we think of politics, we tend to think of party politics, but that's not what he means. And regardless of people's personal views, the Bible never endorses any political party or ideology. What Peterson means relates to the Greek concept of the polis. It was a word that originally referred to the Greek city-states, but it kind of became shorthand for the entirety of the human social environment. It is the sphere in which humans live and move and have their being. In short, prayer is about everything that involves humans. So Peterson writes, prayer of course has to do with God, but prayer also has to do with much else. War and government, poverty, sentimentality, politics and economics, work and marriage, everything, in fact. In short, there is no aspect or part of human life with which prayer is not involved. Prayer is the unaccounted for, unreported cause behind many of the events that fill our history books and daily newspaper headlines. We are currently looking at the terrible numbers of people who are dying every week, every day in fact, from COVID-19. What we don't know is how much more terrible those numbers would have been but for prayer. In ages past, people would have recognised the hand of God in response to the prayers of his people. But now we just say, well, it was good politics, or it was good economic strategy, or it was efficient planning. What Psalm 2 seeks to do is lift our vision away from such narrow confines, to enlarge our imagination, to lift our vision away even from the powerful movers and shakers who direct much of our daily lives, and to get a glimpse of the deeper reality of God on his throne. We need a shift in our imaginations, as Peterson writes, that enables us to see that the world of God is large, far larger than the worlds of kings and princes, prime ministers and presidents, far larger than the worlds reported by newspaper and television, far larger than the world described in big books by nuclear physicists and military historians. We need a way to imagine, to really see that the world of God's ruling word is not an afterthought to the worlds of the stock exchange, the rocket launching, the summit diplomacy, but itself contains them. That's not simply a matter of asserting or declaring God's sovereignty as a theological concept. We need a way to convincingly realise and to live in the light of the largeness of God, in the face of the competing bigness of the world. We need to understand his sovereignty is not so much in theological terms, but in terms of Torah, as an instruction that shapes our lives. Psalm 2 gives us the tools that we need in several ways. Firstly, the opening word, why, is not so much a question, it's an exclamation of astonishment. Why? Why would mere humans dare to think they could set themselves up against God, against his chosen one, and against his ways and his word? A few psalms later, the psalmist will ask the question, quite pointedly, what is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man that you care for him? In Psalm 2, we are being directed to reflect on the contrast between the largeness of God and the smallness of mankind, including the smallness of the power brokers, the movers and shakers, the kings and princes, the prime ministers and presidents. Secondly, we read in verse 4, the one enthroned in heaven laughs, the Lord scoffs at them. The description of God enthroned in heaven is not intended to suggest that he is distantly removed from what's going on, far from it. He is fully aware of the kings and rulers and their plots against him and his chosen one and his word. The phrase rather is intended to remind us that God is on the throne. It is symbolic of his exaltation and power that is out of this world and beyond anything that the world can match. Now, normally, I guess you would expect someone in God's position to simply destroy his challengers. But the challenge is so ridiculous that God just laughs. Now, Alec Motyer points out that the verb is imperfect, and so it could be read as being that God laughs and goes on laughing. It's only when the kings and rulers and those who plot against God's word, who in their stubbornness refuse to accept God's rule, that the tone changes and God rebukes them and warns them of his wrath. If prayer is to have any meaning for us at all, not only must it flow out of lives in which the Torah, the instructive word of God, has hit its mark, it must also recognise that prayer is involved in every single aspect of human life, and that God reigns and rules supreme over every aspect of human life. I'm on record as having said that there is no power in prayer itself. The fact is that people in every religion pray. Prayer does not have a power in itself to change any situation in life. But prayer, instructed and shaped by the Word of God, submitted to the authority of God, that recognises the sovereign power of God, brings us into an experience of that God, the God who sits enthroned in the heavens. And it's that that changes everything. More than anything, it's that which changes us. Thanks for listening.